Hello friends, my name is Muttapalpola and I'm working as a business intelligence consultant for past 7 years. This is my first YouTube video for data community to share my experience. Today I'm going to talk about how to develop a SSRS report using Python language. Here my main objective is to give a brief introduction on how to use or how to do Python scripting on SQL Server and push process data into SSRS report. To explain it, in this slide, I added this simple diagram that describes flow of connecting Python and SSRS report. You know that in every report development we can have front end and also the back end. The front end here is a SSRS report portal and the back end normally is a database engine. But to do Python scripting, we need to have SQL Server 2017 version or higher version because Microsoft provided Python programming facility with and after 2017 version. If we focus on the first component, actually this is the important part. The SQL Server machine learning service. Actually, this will enable us to write Python code on SQL Server. The most important, or the I can say it's a very good advantage in this facility that we can mix up TSQL and Python, and we can build stored procedure to process data more efficiently. Now the second thing is this SQL Server. As I previously mentioned, we need the SQL Server 2017 version and then the SSRS reporting service. Okay. To have this SQL Server machine learning service, we need to install this part along with SQL Server installation. Once you start SQL Server installation, you will during this installation you will have this screen, and here you can have to tick machine learning service options like this way. Here in my example I choose only Python. If you like, you can add R also. Okay, let's look at how SQL Server machine learning service is functioning. Here you can see a summarized diagram to explain the architecture. Once Python request received from SQL Server, and it will pass into the Launchpad service. This Launchpad service will manage the communication between SQL Server and the Python process. Once the request passed into the Launchpad service, it will hand it over to Python process or the Python launcher, and it will do the data process and calculation, everything, and pass the final result into the BXL server. BXL server will use the SQL satellite service to communicate the final result to SQL server. This is very summarized explanation about this architecture. If you want to know about it, you can navigate to this URL that provided by Microsoft, the Microsoft documents. Here Microsoft people explain all the components and how the communication happen step by step. Okay, now installing SQL Server machine learning service is not enough to do Python scripting. Actually, it's the key requirement, but we need to follow additional 3 more steps. First thing is that we need to check the Launchpad service is running. Second thing is that we need to check the relevant permissions have been granted Launchpad service to access the Python service file or not. The third one is we have to check whether the external script enabled or not. Now let's go by one. Now the first thing is we need to check whether Launchpad service is running or not. To check SQL Server Launchpad service status, we need to open SQL Configuration Manager application. Here you can see this in my machine the SQL Server Launchpad is running and start mode set for the automatic, and then the first step is okay. If you have to check in your machines that this service is the status is set for the running. Otherwise you can't execute Python or even R script on SQL Server. Okay, let's move to second step. That here we need to check the relevant permission have been granted to Launchpad service to access Python service folder. Now, if we go back to the architecture diagram, there I mentioned that this Launchpad service manage communication between SQL Server and this Python launch or the Python process. To do that, the Launchpad service need relevant access permission to access this Python folder or the Python service. To check that one, we need to go to the folder or the driver that we install the SQL Server. Now in my case I installed the C drive and then SQL Server folder in C drive, and here you can get the Python service folder. And once we check the security, here I can't see the Launchpad service as a user with the control with the relevant user permission. Now what we can do it, we can open SQL Server Configuration Manager, and we can get the user of it, and let's minimize this one, and we can add that user. I can see this MS SQL, this user is valid user, and we can add it and we can grant full control, we can apply it. Okay, here you can see that we successfully added MS SQL Launchpad service into Python service folder with full control. Now we done with second step. Now we can move to third step. In third step we have to execute this command, and we have to we can configure SQL Server that this command will enable SQL Server to execute Python programming language. Okay, let's do it. Open the SQL Server, paste the command and execute it. Now you can see the status has been changed to 0 to 1. Now all 4 steps completed. Actually we followed 4 steps to enable SQL Server to execute Python language. First one is that we have to install SQL Server machine learning service along with SQL Server installation. Second one is we have to check Launchpad service status, it's running or not. Third one is that we have to check the Launchpad service has relevant access to communicate with the Python service folder. And the fourth one is that we have to execute this command, the external script command, to enable the option to access Python libraries or the external libraries, like not only the Python, also R. Okay, now all the steps completed. Now we can work on our demo. Okay, first of all we need to know what is the sequence or the order to execute Python on SQL Server. Here you can see the code template that we can use to do it. First part is this code, and here we inform to the SQL Server that we are going to execute external script. Then we have to mention the language into this variable, and then we can write our Python code for, and we can set for this variable script variable, and then we have to set the input from SQL Server DB to this variable input data underscore 1, and we can use alias for this input for the data set, and then we can get the output into this variable from this Python script. Okay, next slide we can see an example. Now first thing is that to inform that we are going to execute external script, Then here I mentioned that my language is Python, and then my script, Python script, and then the input from SQL table statement, and the alias for this data set or this input data set, and the output. Okay, first of all we need to know the sequence or the order to execute Python with SQL. Here you can see a code template that we can use to do that. The first command is to inform to SQL Server that we are going to execute external scripts, and the second variable we are going to store the language. Now here I mentioned the Python. If you like, you can use R. Now in this variable we have to store the code, the Python code that we are going to execute, and this variable is to set the input for the Python code. Actually we can say simply, we can say a select statement, and then second this variable is to set a alias for this input variable. Now once we set a select statement, we can alias using any name, and the final one is the output variable. Once we execute the Python code, it will set into this variable, and we can get and we can view the output. Okay, let's try out sample code. Now this is the sample code that I'm going to execute. Now here we can see this the command to execute external script, and then the language name, and the Python code here, and the SQL's input, the select statement, and the alias name, and also finally the output variable. Now here I'm going to pass the select statement into the Python code, and I'm going to get the same result set from the Python execution. Okay, let's try out this code. Okay, open SQL Server. Now here we can see the same code here. Once I execute it, yes, now we can see 5 columns. If I execute this select statement, you can have the same output, right? Now this is a very simple code to try out whether we can check that our code is working perfectly or not. Okay, let's move on to our requirement. Now this is our SQL output, and now this is the required report format. If you compare these two, you can see there is a pivot operation happen here, right? Based on this value category column, you can see there is a pivot operation happen, and also you can see subtotal for based on this product category 2 column, and also you can see row wise total and mean and standard deviation value. Now we have to build a Python code to get this output. Okay, here I'm going to split the main requirement into several subtasks because to understand the Python code easily. Okay, now here I splitted the main requirement into 4 subtasks. First is the pivot operation. Now here we need to do a pivot operation based on value category column. Then we need to add subtotal based on product category 2 column. Then we need to add row wise total, mean and standard deviation value for each row, and then we need to sort the final output. Okay, let's start to work on code. Now this is the example that I used to explain how the Python code is working on SQL. Now we can develop this code to get our required output. Okay, let's execute this again. Now you can see this you can see the table select statement output from this code. Now first thing we need to do the pivot operation based on this column value category column. Now how to do it? Now I will add this code. Okay. Now here you can see this import commands, right? Now here you can see pandas as pd and then numpy as np. We need these libraries to do data manipulation in Python. Now pandas we can use to do more advanced analytics operations, and numpy we can use actually numpy can provide high perform multidimensional arrays that we can use for uh, efficient data manipulation. Okay, now we can see this pandas. Now its alias as pd then the pd.pivot table. This is the command to do the pivot operation. Now we know that we passed our SQL statement out in output to this variable data variable, and now we are going to do the pivot operation based on product category 1 this column, product category 2 this column, and product name, and using we are going to sum the sales value, right? Okay, let's check the output. Now here I set the output to the data variable for this output. Now I'm going to change it to this SQL table. Actually in Python we can call this variable as data frame. Okay, let's execute this one. Now you can see pivot operation done, but we can't see the product category name, category 1 2 another product name. To view that information we need to do a reset index operation to the data frame. Okay, let's execute this one. Now you can see the product category information and the name, and also you can see a additional column also. Here I set a new column, add a new column called sort index and set it for 1. I will use this column to sort the final output. Okay, now first task we completed. Now we need to add subtotals to this output. Now I'm going to use this command. Now you can see there's a subtotal underscore df. This is another data frame like this variable. Now here I'm going to use SQL table as a source, and I'm going to do group by operation same as in SQL using product category 1 and 2, because I mentioned that we need to get the subtotal based on the product category 2 column, and I'm going to do the sum operation, and I'm going to insert those rows to this data frame. Okay, let's check on it. Now you can see it get aggregated and aggregated. Now you can see these are new rows. Now its sort index automatically is set to 2. Now it's very important thing. Now if you want to do add a sequence number, you can use this sort index thing, and you can add and you can use that in final output sorting. Okay, now we have two data frames or two variables. In SQL table we have all the pivot information, and in this data frame we have the subtotal information. Now we need to merge those two data frames to build the final output. Okay, let's check how to do it. Now there is a command called append. Now once I do it, I'm going to replace the same SQL table with the existing rows plus the subtotal rows. Okay, let's execute this one. Now you can see this is the Based on this sorting index, we can identify this is the pivot information, and then this are the subtotal data rows. Okay, now we can see null values here. Now here we are going to replace these null values using total text value. Okay, as same as in SQL, we know that we have coalesce command in SQL Server. We can replace null values. In Python, we have this fill na function to replace null values. Now once I execute this one, you can see the null values replaced by the total text value. Right now the it's okay, but we need to have add mean, this row wise total and standard deviation columns to this output. Now using these commands, these codes, we can do it. Now once I execute it, you can see the subtotal here, the row wise total, sorry, row wise total, and then the mean and the standard deviation value. Right, now all things look fine, but the output not sorted. Now we need to get sorted output. To do that, we can have this sort by value code. I'm going to sort the output based on product category 2, product name, and the sorting index. Okay, let's check. Okay, now we can have the subtotal here. You can see the car, and this product category 2 is the hatchback and the total, and also row wise total here, and the mean and standard deviation. Now we build the code, Python code, to get the required output. Now if we want to push this process data into SSRS report, we need to build a stored procedure. Okay, let's start on that one. Here you can see the complete Python TSQL code that we developed to get the required output. Now I'm going to use this code to build SSRS report, but for that we need stored procedure. I'm going now. I'm going to build that stored procedure. In additional step, I added temporary table for this code to store the Python output. Okay, let's check how it's working fine or not. Yes, okay, it's total and everything sorted. That's fine. Okay, let's use this code and build the stored procedure. Here I set the stored procedure name as sales report. Okay, let's create it. It's fine. Now we can check. Yes, it's working fine. I'm going to use this stored procedure to build the SSRS report. To do that, I'm going to use report builder, SSRS report builder. Okay, first we need to add the data source. So let's say sales DB, and I'm going to use SQL Server and then the local server and the database as sales. Okay, and fine. Now I'm going to add the data set. Here we need to set the stored procedure. Okay, the sales report, let's say the sales data set. Right, okay, click OK. We can see the fields. Now we can build the simple SSRS sales report. Okay, I'm going to insert a table here, and we can insert the table the field names like this way. This is the completed SSRS report that we built on the stored procedure. Let's run this report. Now you can see it's a very basic sales report. Now actually you can use this knowledge to build a very complex predictive or forecasting SSRS report using Python language on SQL Server. Now we can move on to the conclusion. Now from this video you can learn about SQL machine learning service and how it works, and then required steps to configure SQL Server to execute Python code. And third one is order of Python execution on SQL Server, and we did a demo to explain how to do the Python coding on SQL Server. I think this knowledge will help you to sort out your development problems related to Python scripting on SQL Server. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video and have a nice day.